The Scimitar and the Serpent, a tale of Salah ad-Din. The year is 1169. The prize, Egypt. The cost, everything. Before he was the legend, before the horns of Hattin shattered the Crusader dream, before he stood as the equal and nemesis of Richard the Lionheart, he was just a man, a young Kurdish officer known more for his piety and his love of intellectual debate than for the carnage of battle. He was Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, and on this blistering Egyptian night, a poisoned dagger, a rogue pigeon, and a hidden manuscript were about to forge the greatest Muslim leader of the Middle Ages. His story is not just one of chivalry and conquest. It is a chilling testament to the brutal, unseen calculus of power, where assassination was the favorite tool of diplomacy. The air in Cairo hung thick, heavy with the scent of spices, donkey dung, and the cloying sweetness of the Nile in flood. Even the stones of the Fatimid palace, vast and impossibly ancient, seemed to sweat in the stifling heat of the Egyptian summer. Inside a small, sparsely furnished chamber on the compound's eastern edge, Salah ad-Din Yusuf was not sleeping. He was writing, a meticulous treatise on Islamic jurisprudence, far from the battle plans that had defined his last few years. At 29, he was already the wazir, the most powerful man in Egypt save the caliph himself. But this elevation was a political accident, a treacherous gift bestowed after his uncle, the famed general Shirkuh, had died suddenly, perhaps too suddenly, just 2 months prior. Salah ad-Din dipped his reed pen into the inkpot, the only sound the faint, rhythmic scratching on the parchment. He was protected, of course. 2 Mamluk guards stood like statues at his door, and the entire city was held in the iron grip of his Syrian Kurdish troops. But the true danger in Cairo did not come with the clash of steel. It came in silence. The Fatimid regime he served was a crumbling shadow of its former glory. For generations, its caliphs had been puppet monarchs, their strings pulled by viziers who rarely died of old age. The current vizier, the previous one, had been Shirkuh, and before him the scheming eunuch Shawar, whom Shirkuh had personally and dramatically beheaded on the streets of Cairo just 6 months earlier. Salah ad-Din knew the history. He knew the palace was a nest of vipers, divided between the Sunni influence he represented and the powerful, deeply entrenched Shia loyalists of the Fatimid Caliphate. They had not accepted a young foreign wazir who was dedicated to restoring orthodoxy. He finished a sentence, then paused, his head cocked. A barely audible scuffling sound came from the courtyard below his window, followed by the soft thump against the stone wall. It was too low for a cat, too dull for a thrown rock. He rose quietly, drawing the heavy double-edged khanjar, dagger, he kept hidden beneath his writing table. He moved to the window, a narrow slit high in the stone wall, and looked down. The courtyard was deserted, washed pale by the high, gibbous moon. The sound had come from the Diwan al-Insha, the Chancery of Correspondence, a building that contained the state archives, including the delicate letters exchanged with the Frankish Crusaders in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. He scanned the shadows. Nothing. He was about to dismiss it as a startled rodent when his eye caught a movement, not on the ground, but in the air, fluttering erratically before landing on a low balcony railing. It was a pigeon, but not just any pigeon. In the faint moonlight, he saw a tiny rolled scroll, a communication tube, still attached to its leg. This was a pigeon post bird, the sophisticated aerial messenger system that was the bloodline of communication across the vast Ayyubid territories. But the bird was injured. One wing drooped at an unnatural angle, and it struggled to maintain its perch. This was highly irregular. A state messenger bird would be tended with meticulous care. It wasn't just injured, it looked exhausted, as if it had flown a catastrophic distance under extreme duress. He considered calling a guard, but something, a cold premonition, stopped him. The guard would report the bird to the Sa'ib al-Barid, the master of the intelligence service, and the Sa'ib al-Barid, a man named Karim, was a known Fatimid loyalist who had only recently sworn fealty to the new wazir. If the message was meant for him and contained something only he should see, Karim would intercept it. He carefully opened the heavy wooden shutters of his window just a crack, slipped out of the room, and moved silently down the stone staircase. When he reached the courtyard, he found the pigeon still there, breathing shallowly. As he approached, he realized the bird wasn't merely exhausted. It was convulsing, its tiny legs twitching in the final throes of death. Poison. Someone had intentionally injured the bird, or, more likely, intercepted it and delivered a lethal dose of a slow-acting toxin to ensure it died after it reached the palace, but before its message could be officially logged. It was a message meant to be found by chance or by a specific person who knew where to look. He knelt, his long robe sweeping the dust, and gently, with the practiced touch of a man who had grown up in the rough and tumble camps of Tikrit and Damascus, he removed the tiny scroll from the bird's leg. The moment he stood, the pigeon shuddered one last time, its eye glazing over, and fell dead from the railing. Salah ad-Din returned to his chamber, his pulse a frantic drummer against the sudden silence of the night. He sealed the door with a heavy bolt and unrolled the scroll. It was not a message. It was a single, cryptic instruction written in an unfamiliar, highly educated hand.
Look to the spine of the 7th volume of Al-Ghazali's Ihya in the Sultan's private study. The serpent coils. He stared at the words. Al-Ghazali's Ihya was a masterpiece of Sunni theology. It was also a work that the Shia caliphs of Egypt had previously restricted. Its presence in the caliph's private study was itself a bold, perhaps insulting act of his late uncle Shirkuh. This was a game, a deadly intellectual cipher. The Sultan's private study was in the innermost heart of the palace, a place Salah ad-Din had, until now, deliberately avoided to maintain the outward fiction that he was merely the caliph's servant. To enter it now, under the cover of night, was to admit he was the true master of Egypt and to put himself in direct confrontation with the caliph's hidden guards and loyalists. He strapped the khanjar to his belt, pulled his heavy cloak around his shoulders, and extinguished the lamp. He was no longer the theologian. He was a usurper on a dead pigeon's tip, walking into the coiling heart of the serpent. The 7th volume, A Shadow Pact. The private study of the Caliph al-Adid was a mausoleum of forbidden knowledge. As Salah ad-Din slipped past the official seals and entered the room, he felt an oppressive chill, despite the heat. The shelves were lined with rare texts on esoteric sciences, astrology, and forgotten Fatimid doctrines. It was the intellectual armory of a dynasty. He located the Ihya Ulum al-Din, the revival of the religious sciences, by al-Ghazali, a work that advocated a spiritual revival that directly contradicted the political and religious authority of the caliph he served. He found the 7th volume. It felt slightly heavier than its neighbors. Following the instruction, he ran his hand along the spine. His fingers found a near-invisible seam. The book was a cleverly disguised box. With a soft click, the spine came away in his hand. Inside, nestled on crimson velvet, was not a theological text, but a single folded sheet of papyrus and something else that made him draw a sharp, involuntary breath. A meticulously fashioned piece of rope coiled into the shape of a snake's head. The serpent had coiled. He unfolded the papyrus, holding it close to the faint light filtering from the courtyard. It was written in a perfect official script, unlike the hurried note of the pigeon. It was a memorandum, dated 3 days prior. It was an inventory list, innocuous at first glance. 10 bales of Egyptian linen, 3 casks of Syrian wine, 6 loads of grain. He stopped. The last item was underlined 3 times in red ink. 10 jars of Zafaran al-Maut. Zafaran al-Maut, the saffron of death. A colloquial name for a potent, colorless, and odorless arsenic compound derived from saffron-colored roots known only to the most secretive poison masters in Aleppo and Baghdad. It was slow-acting, often mimicking the symptoms of a high fever or natural organ failure. It was the preferred tool for a political assassination meant to look like an act of God. But who was the poison intended for? He scanned the rest of the document, searching for a recipient, a signature, anything. The paper was clearly a shipping manifest detailing supplies being moved from the palace stores to the caliph's private kitchen. The target was not him. The target was the Caliph Al-Adid himself. The plot was brilliant in its cruelty. If the Caliph died of a sudden mysterious illness, Salahuddin, the ambitious foreigner who had just usurped all political power, would be the only suspect. His Sunni troops would instantly be branded regicides. The ensuing chaos would trigger an immediate coup by the Fatimid loyalists and an invasion by the waiting Frankish armies in the north. His nascent control over Egypt would dissolve into a bloody war of succession. He was being set up to fail, to be either the victim or the scapegoat of a masterfully orchestrated assassination. The poison was likely being prepared for use tonight. And the informer? The rope in the box, the coiled serpent, was the symbol of the Hashashin, the Az-Nisari Ismaili assassins, the shadowy sect whose terror network stretched from the mountains of Persia to the port cities of the Mediterranean. It meant that this warning did not come from a friend or a loyalist. It came from an enemy. It was a chilling exchange of information. We know your enemy's plot. We are giving you a chance to stop it. We, the most feared murderers in the world, are, for this single night, your silent partners. Salahuddin stared at the coiled rope. The assassins never acted without an ultimate, incomprehensible motive. By saving the Caliph, he would consolidate his power, yes, but he would also incur a debt to the old man of the mountain, the legendary leader of the Hashashin. He had minutes, perhaps an hour to act. He had to stop a poisoning he could not prove, and he had to do it without alerting the conspiracy that had already infiltrated the highest levels of the palace. The legend of Salahuddin, the chivalrous warrior and pious statesman, was not born on the battlefield of the Franks. It was born right here, in the suffocating silence of a poisoned night, forced into an unholy alliance with the world's most terrifying secret society.